I actually sat down with like an Excel spreadsheet and was like, okay, this is how much I need to make every month to feed my dog and to eat top ramen and to pay my bills. I think I could do this in 1 week.
Welcome to the You Are a Lawyer podcast. Josh Brumley, how are you today?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing very well. So, if you guys are watching on YouTube, Josh has this fantastic blue color in his background, and we were talking about it offline. And if you're not watching on YouTube, why not finish listening to the podcast here? Jump over to YouTube and take a look. So, Josh, can you talk to us a little bit about the Brumley Law Firm and Brumley Blue?
Sure. I've been a lawyer now 8 years. I started my practice right out of law school. I went away to Florida from the Seattle area. I went to Florida for law school and then came immediately back. So I didn't have a network outside of law school to interview or hire from. And I didn't have any experience as a young attorney. So I had to kind of just hang my own shingle right off the bat. When I did that, I started networking with anyone I could. I learned family law. I started working with a family law attorney. I started volunteering for a clinic that needed a lot of family law help. And then I met a public defender who needed some extra help once every 2 weeks or so, and then learned criminal defense from her. And then just kind of started my own general practice after learning from those folks. I've got a business background. My undergrad is in business, and I got my MBA while I was in law school. So I think that was really helpful to have that business background to kind of like help me budget and plan and all the things that I think lawyers are not usually the best at. But a bunch of my background in business has helped me to be a great marketer. And that's what the Brumley blue color and the Brumley t-shirt, all that comes from is my background in business and marketing. And I think that good marketers get the best cases, and it's not just about having 15 old gray-haired attorneys. It's really about how you connect with your clients, and how you can best do that now is things like this podcast.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being a guest. I'm really excited to share your story because I know a fair amount of lawyers who started their own law firms, but most of them do it out of necessity, right? Either they can't get hired, or depending on when they get out of school, the economy is bad. So the fact that you chose to start your own law firm right out of school, you got to give me more details. Like, that's a pretty big risk for a lawyer.
Yeah, I was working for the Social Security Administration, and I remember my grandfather actually said, "Why would you quit a federal job where you have guaranteed 40 hours, health benefits, retirement? If you work there for 10 years, your student loans are completely forgiven. Why would you quit that job?" But honestly, I was the most unhappy I've ever been with any job. It was grueling to go to that office every day, and that made me really disgruntled. And I remember the breaking point for me was someone had called and said, "Hi." It was the Social Security Administration. So when someone passes away, you call the Social Security Administration, and the person who answers the phone has to do a death report and basically terminate their Social Security benefits or Medicare benefits, things like that, turn it off in the federal government system so there can't be fraud and things like that. So someone had keyed in the wrong Social Security number and killed the wrong person in Social Security's database. And so the living grandmother went to go get her medication, and the pharmacy said, "Oh, no, you're dead. You can't get this medication." She said, "No, I'm right here. Hello, I'm not dead." And the granddaughter was on the phone saying, "Hey, you guys accidentally messed up. Please fix this." And I got that call, and I immediately got my boss on the phone, and I was like, "What's going on with this? We need to fix this right now. Grandma needs her medicine. This is not okay." And they said, "Oh, you got to put in a report. It takes 2 to 4 weeks." And I said, "Grandma needs her medicine today. No, we're not doing that." And I got into this like altercation with my boss, who said, "You're overstepping here. This is not how the system works. It's not meant to work this fast." And I said, "But we messed up. This is our fault. And this person, who's a real person who needs medication that they're entitled to, can't get it." And it frustrated me. And I realized at that point I was so unhappy working there that I had to go. And I've always been an entrepreneur. and a bit of a terrible employee, I think. That's just my background. I think good leaders are hard to find, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn. If I meet someone who I enjoy following, it's not a hard thing for me. But when people do things that I see problems with, I'm going to be outspoken about that, and that doesn't make me a very good employee. And that's why I think I'm better off as a business owner than an employee. And some people, they enjoy the 9 to 5, clocking out, going home, having a work life balance. And I've just always been someone who's like, I'll just work all weekend. That's fine with me.
For lack of a better, I know I'm simplifying this, but what I keep hearing is you watching them and you're like, okay, I couldn't do a worse job running my own firm. So I'm going to just take the risk and run my own firm.
I actually sat down with like an Excel spreadsheet and was like, okay, this is how much I need to make every month to feed my dog and to eat top ramen and to pay my bills. I think I could do this in 1 week if everything goes well with the side jobs I have from the lawyers who are feeding me, hourly work. And then I really started grinding and was like, okay, well, the internet is how everyone finds everything. I don't need to be out, shaking hands with tow truck drivers. That's beneficial long term maybe, but I need cases right now. So how can I find cases right now? And I just started going on like Facebook group pages and saying, hey, I do free consultations for family law. And I had 10 consultations on my first day of work. And out of those 10, a lot of those people couldn't afford an attorney, but I was still able to give them advice and help them. And I think that that type of behavior really grows your network as well, because people know that you're a resource. And when they know you're a resource, they're going to reach out to you for many things that you might not be able to help with, some things that you can, and sometimes it'll be something that they can pay you for. And that's all you need.
That's all you need in a very simplified way. But I think between going to law school, getting your MBA while you were in law school, and then just knowing yourself, you were like, I can do this, right? I'm going to take my simplified spreadsheet. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to tell people about my business. And it worked. I mean, you took a bet on yourself and it paid off. So that sounds incredible.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So, in preparing for the recording, I'm looking at your website. I'm going through your questionnaire, and your website says working hours 24 hours,
Yes.
which I think is fantastic. So, do you have people that work for you around the clock, or can you call and leave a voicemail and then someone gets back to you? Or have you truly just staffed people to be on a 24-hour basis to handle any kind of incoming calls or inquiries?
So in the beginning of my practice, I was a bit more general practice. So I did criminal defense, personal injury, family law, and business litigation, like contract disputes, formations, that kind of thing. And over time, I developed to just be a car accident law firm. And car accidents are a very lucrative way for a firm to make money, but they're also incredibly competitive. And Google ads for that type of thing, there are firms that are spending like $1 million a month. But as I began competing in this space, I realized that many of these firms have a 24-hour line, and it's not an incredibly difficult thing to do. You just work with a call center, create like a script for the call center to ask any intake phone calls that they get at 2 in the morning or whatever. And they're not going to sign anybody up for you, but they can at least get that information when it's convenient for the person and schedule an appointment for you or schedule a call back for them. And that's what we do. So I have a call center that's 24 hours every single day. It's a company. It's not my employees, so I'm not paying payroll and all the associated costs with having someone 24 hours to just sit around. Because most nights people aren't calling. A lot of our phone calls are happening during business hours, but weekends we still get a lot of calls. People call right after the car accident happens, and that can be anytime, day or night. And so we want to just be really accessible to those people, because we know that if we're not, the next number on Google is going to be.
Right. And what I think is so powerful in that is, for one, car crashes don't just happen on a schedule. Like you said, the majority of the calls are during working hours, but if I'm in an accident at 2 a.m., Pacific Standard Time, I want to call you. And so I love that you have that availability, that you were kind of watching your competition and making sure that you were competing in the, the right space with your services. And even down to your phone number, 1-833-83 car crash. Like, I
Yeah.
don't even live in Washington, but I'm going to remember that number. That's fantastic.
Thank you. I try very hard. We also have a mnemonic device, car crash, call Josh, and that's really on a lot of our marketing, our billboards, our check photos. When someone comes in and they get a big settlement, they sign a little media release if they want to take a photo, and then we have like a little winner's circle photo backdrop where it says car crash, call Josh in big writing, and it's based on the psychological idea that rhyme is reason effect, which means like if something rhymes, the human brain believes it to be true more often than the exact same fact if it doesn't rhyme. And crash and Josh don't really rhyme. People joke about that, like car crosh, but it's close enough. I think it works. People remember it, so it's helpful.
Yeah, as long as it's memorable. So I gotta say, when you're in law school, the type of law that you're practicing is what's considered torts or tortious actions, right? Personal injury, car crash, all of those kind of things, a little bit of negligence. This is not a sexy kind of law. But you have a great amount of energy and excitement as you're talking about it to be 8 years into it. What keeps you excited about running this law firm and practicing this law every day?
You know, when I was in law school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like, yeah, let's get through law school, let's pass the bar, and then I'll worry about what I'm going to do. And there were people who knew that they wanted to be prosecutors, and people that knew that they wanted to be car accident attorneys and things like that. But I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I had to try a lot of things to find what I was passionate about and what I liked doing and what I didn't like doing, and that was okay with me because I had just this budget, and I said as long as I'm making this much money, it doesn't matter. So I did a couple bankruptcy cases. I worked on some immigration cases, and the theme for me was I enjoyed helping people, but I didn't enjoy collecting the money from the people I was helping. And that's really a difficult niche to figure out because if you're doing family law, people weep. They're so thankful and it is so rewarding. But when that bill comes, they're not as happy about that. And so I was frequently like cutting my bill or waiving my fees to help people who really just needed help. And that's not a great way to run a business, but I felt like that was a great way for me to be able to sleep at night, and I wasn't going to drop people who couldn't pay their bill. So then in criminal defense work, there was public defense, which pays you about 10% of the rate that you would charge privately. So you have to have 10 times more cases to make the same amount of money on the exact same, like DUIs, $400 or $4,000. Like that's the difference. It's crazy. And so when you're a public defender, you're paid by the city or the county, but it's 10% of the rate. So I did that for a while, but it wasn't great. And then I did private criminal defense work where again I'm collecting from the person, and depending on the crime, that wasn't too big of a deal. But the more heinous the crime, the more hard it is to muscle someone to pay their bill. And so if you're working with someone who's charged with some serious violent felonies, and then you have to have that bill collector call, you gotta pick your tone just right, right? So like you don't want to come off too aggressive with the guy who's charged with attempted murder. So that was I never thought about that in law school. They didn't teach me like this is how you collect from someone who's a convicted murderer who's on trial for murder. Like this is not part of it. So insurance companies write the checks for the clients that I help on car accident cases, and I don't have to collect a single penny up front to help these people. They get paid at the end of the case, and I get paid at the end of the case, and they're just thankful. And that makes me really, really energized. I think that it's a great way to practice law, and I know there's a push to have some like business attorneys do this same type of thing, work on contingency where they're not billing by the hour, they're billing based on their results, and that's a really interesting dynamic. I think it leads to clients and their attorneys having a really unified front instead of an attorney who's just maybe late on their bills and needs to put in a bunch of billing. That's just nasty. So I didn't like doing hourly billing. I like this contingency fee. And when I get a client who's unsure about the process and I get to help them through the process and they're like, when do I pay you? How much do I pay you? No, no, no. That's all done at the end. For every dollar I get you, I get 33 more cents. So I'm trying to get you every penny I can.
Yeah, so you're speaking and I'm hearing those commercials in my head. I don't get paid unless you get paid.
Yeah.
But it sounds like from a business model aspect, that's a great way to get paid, right? When I talk to personal injury lawyers, they are just talking about the insurance company and how much they hate them and how they're making billions of dollars, and then the lawyer is the little guy. But then you come in here with a different perspective and you're like, no, it's actually an ideal business model for me. I'm not haggling them for money. They got the result. And honestly, the more money they get, the more money I make. And so that's really kind of visionary. I haven't heard too many people kind of like intentionally go into this type of law because of this kind of like a business payment model. So I think the audience is really going to enjoy that.
Well, I think there's one other dynamic that it's important to take away from that conversation too is I did that general practice until I had enough cases coming in to be able to pay my staff from the personal injury cases, which takes a lot of time. We call it being in the hopper. A case is in treatment and then in negotiations, and then sometimes has to get filed as a lawsuit. So some of these cases take 3 months, 6 months, a year, longer. And I had to do family law and criminal defense to keep the staff paid every 2 weeks and skip some paychecks of my own to get to that point. But I'm very thankful that our practice has grown so much. I've got a ton of trial experience from those other areas of practice, and personal injury doesn't go to trial very often. Um, no matter how hard I push them, they seem to just want to cut the check and get me to go away. So I try very hard to be aggressive right out of the gate, and the clients win, and that's just really helpful. But it's been a lot of time building that list of cases to get to the point of paying myself, paying the payroll, paying the bills with just car accident cases. That took
Yeah. Well, trial is really hard. It's difficult from the lawyer's aspect, right? I'm fighting as hard as I can for my client. You're on the other side of the table fighting as hard as you can. But then also it's really hard for the clients. You're going through all their information, you're going through their hospital records. It can be pretty hard. So let's talk a little bit about marketing. Okay, lawyers are notoriously bad at marketing. We're getting better. We're getting a lot better. But I remember being in law school and you're taking your professional ethics class and they talk about how you can have a paid referral, but you got to skirt the line. You got to be careful and you can't really say, I guarantee you $1 million per car accident, but you also want to grab someone's attention, right? I know that titles with 4 words are typically pretty memorable. You are a lawyer. You know what I mean?
Car
Car
crash,
crash,
car
Josh
crash.
Brumley,
Yeah.
those kind of things. But no one taught me that in law school. What was it about marketing and even your website that, how did you learn that? Did you learn that from getting your MBA or were you studying on your own or what?
That's a really funny question. So before law school, before undergrad even, I had an interest in local music. And I was a musician that played in bands, and I started running my own live music spaces, so like a club. And so I had to be a marketer and a promoter for the events that I was throwing, because if the event didn't do well, it was my reputation, it was my money on the line, it was all these things. So I had to, get good at graphic design, meet other graphic designers. I had to get good at marketing and understand that the people that came to certain shows didn't come to every show. So I wanted to find the demographics that came to those bands' events and really understand who I was trying to market to. And I think that background has helped me an incredible amount to be a business person. And I don't think that many people, I see so many bad logos. I see so many great aggressive attorneys who just like use an MSN email address and like a Yahoo email. there was an attorney I was working against, John Chili at AOL.com, and I was like, this is his professional email address that he's sending me aggressive emails on. So at the firm, he became known as Mr. Chili, and he's since retired. You know, probably for the best. He's on to just enjoying his time eating chili or whatever. But that kind of thing is really important, and I think that people our demographic, our age, our generation, we're a lot more internet aware that an MSN or an AOL email address is not going to seem professional. It's going to seem more like spam than someone who's getting paid thousands of dollars to represent my interests. But what I want us to all be aware of is that next generation under us. And so they call it Generation Alpha because Gen Z is the end and now it's to Alpha. And these are people who are born with cell phones like in their hands. These are people who the internet is like second nature to them. And that's not necessarily something that we grew up with and we had to learn as we got older. But this is how the world works now. And that's the future of our industry. And the law is notoriously slow to respond to technology. But with COVID, we've been forced now to all incorporate Zoom into our lives. And with AI, there's this huge push to use AI as a tool to help with drafting motions or drafting arguments or drafting website copy or questions for a podcast or whatever people might use it for. And so understanding that these are tools that if you don't understand how they work, you're going to be left behind. And working for an attorney who's not a techie person might be the best way for you to add value to someone else's firm as a techie person. And so go into these interviews, if you're a young attorney or a law student, go into these interviews saying, hey, I know X, Y, and Z about technology, and that's something that I can bring to the table because I don't have legal experience, and many places don't want someone who doesn't have legal experience. But that's not the only thing that they're looking for. So understand what you do bring to the table and say, hey, Outlook is like a joke to me. This is like, you know, opening a text message on my phone. You guys don't use Outlook to its full extent? That's weird. Okay, let's talk about how I can help, you know?
No, I definitely can see that. So I was in big law until 2021. But 2020, you know, everything happens with the pandemic and businesses shut down. And at that time, literally 4 years ago, which I guess 4 years could be a big amount of time, but to me, it's a short amount of time. Only partners in our law firm had laptops. Everybody else was just working in the firm until 9:30 or 10 p.m. on their desk computer. And so things did switch really, really quickly, which is good because the law does not voluntarily make changes, right? There's still only a handful of good legal podcasts because lawyers are like, podcast, what's that? Or they'll listen to it. They just don't want to create one. And I'm like, you guys are missing out.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I really appreciate your podcast because like you said, it's focused on 3Ls and people that are in their primary early years of practice. And that's really where my heart is with my podcast too. My podcast is called Iron Mind Attorney Podcast. The goal is for it to be educational for people who are either dipping their toes in personal injury or deciding that they're going to practice personal injury without knowing what they don't know. So there's like specific case law that we go into and how it applies to certain factual situations. And those tips don't exist on the internet. You have to know someone who already knows about Mahler fees or Winters fees or all these different cases to understand when they apply. And if you don't know when they apply, you're hurting your clients by not knowing about this stuff. So I think that a lot of people dip their toe in personal injury who are like, yeah, I'm going to do criminal law and immigration and probate and personal injury. And it's really hard to be a jack of all trades because that saying is jack of all trades, master of none. You don't know that a case that you settled for $15,000, you could have settled for 25. And if you had settled it for 25, you would have opened up their UIM policy and had an entire other check for $25,000 on the way to this client for a total of $50,000 that you settled for 15. And the client might be excited about 15 because they don't know the difference. But it's your job as the attorney to know when these policies can get opened up, and when you can make a UIM claim, and understanding how to make a UIM claim, it's so complicated, but it took years of work to get to this point. There's tons more that I can learn, and I'm just constantly trying to get better, and get more aggressive, and get um, the guests on my show to give this advice in a way that helps me, but helps everybody that listens to the show.
Yeah. And one thing that I think is important about younger lawyers like us is that we are more willing to share what's going on because you can teach someone about a UIM claim, but that doesn't immediately mean they're out to take your entire practice. Right? They first of all, they could listen, they could think it's exciting. They could listen and say that's great and file it away for the next 5 years. They could, right? They could listen and say, "Oh my God, I just heard from Josh who's an expert." They could send people to you. Right? I think a lot of the old guard with lawyers is just if I tell someone how to do it, they're going to immediately steal my business. And it's like there's so much business and money out here for all of us. That's not really the case. Why don't we just share and just like let you know that I'm the expert? Because who knows what else you could be getting out of just showing people that you're the expert.
I've made almost that exact same statement so many times in my career, and I circle back to one step further. I think that lawyers are bad at marketing, and so it's really expensive to try to find new cases. I say this in family law all the time. Family law attorneys have no incentive to resolve a case quickly, because if they're bad at marketing, they need that case to last a long time so that they can suck every penny out of the person that they're billing. And that's just so disgusting to me, because I want my case to be over as quickly as possible, because my client wants it over as quickly as possible. A business case is the same way. My clients were incentivized as business people to say, what's this going to cost me? I hate that I'm in this situation. It's making me lose sleep at night. That's affecting my job. It's affecting my life, and I want it over with. What's the number? And if I can say, hey, I believe that if we get to this, and then a mediation, I can resolve your case a month from now, 2 months from now. But then the other attorney is just refusing. It's clear to me that there's a financial incentive to that attorney. And it makes me think, okay, well, if they don't have other cases that are going off, they're just like just greedy, just not able to market their services to enough people to get cases coming in the door. And that means they have to hold on to the cases they have. There's this financial benefit to not resolving the cases, and that's just bad marketing. If you're a good marketer, you're not going to be greedy for the cases. You're not going to be greedy with the ideas. You're not going to be greedy with the knowledge. You're sending cases away to other attorneys. Building my network was such an important part of moving back to Washington, and I try very hard. I'm a professor at a local community college. I've done pro tem judge work, and all of these places that I go, I don't expect to get cases from, but all of them I have. Every, all these prosecutors are sending me car accident cases, and law students, and all these people that I just never would expect. I'm not marketing to them. I'm just talking about this role, and this running my business, and how passionate I am about doing this kind of work. And people are like, that's the guy I want to send my case to. So no matter what it is, just be excited to do it. Don't settle on a job like Social Security where you're just going to be unhappy. I remember I would clock in at like 8:45 and then be like, okay, I can't look at my phone. I can't look at my watch. Like, I can't look at the clock until I know it's closer to 10 o'clock. And it'd be like 9:15. I'd be like, "Oh my God, it's only 9:15. Oh no. Oh my, I have 7.5 more hours." I was like counting minutes. It was painful. I hated every minute of it. And it didn't matter if they were paying me $1 million to be there. I was so unhappy. I was so unhappy. But every day I come to this job, and every day I'm just so excited to do it. And I think a bit about that, not just the practice that I'm in, but that it's my business. And there's something so empowering about saying, this is something that I'm passionate about, that I created, and every day it's getting better, and there's more people that are putting time and effort and energy into building this with me. And it's just it's so rewarding. I love it.
Yeah. Well, earlier when you were talking about having that music background and the marketing for the shows, you said the word reputation. I haven't heard people talk about reputations in years. Everything now is work ethic, work ethic, work ethic. Well, you made it through law school, you passed the bar. We know you have the work ethic, but your reputation, I think, is something that people need to think a little bit more about in terms of I'm this absolutely miserable fourth year big law lawyer or wherever I am, miserable. People can tell if you're miserable. Think about that for your reputation, right? Also, don't be miserable. Like, think about your reputation. Do you really want to be working in that terrible office with those crazy hours for the next 10, 15, 30 years? Like,
Yeah.
come on, you can do so many things. So I think that's a really great point.
Echo that. I think that chasing your passion is the only way to live life. And if there's something that's making you happy, go chase that. A law degree opens so many doors for people. And not only for me like having that law degree, but for other people that I can help in all these various different ways. And it can be so incredibly rewarding. I always tell people any clinic needs bodies. Every attorney has the capacity to donate money, but so many of us don't take the time to donate our time. And if you don't know how to practice family law, you can still be an incredible help to a clinic. And there's so much need. Something like 75% of people going through family law cases are pro se. It's insane. Washington actually created the triple LT program, limited licensed legal technicians, as like a paralegal plus, uh, uh, and that program lasted, I think, 5 years. They minted just over 100. The Washington Bar said these are people who can practice in a very limited scope, and they can't represent people in court, but they can give legal advice for family law or some other areas. And the family law bar was so aggressively against that idea because they were saying you're taking business away from us. And I said, these people are unrepresented. You just love dunking on them and being able to represent, you know, military husbands who are taking everything from the single mom, and that's what you want to build your practice around. You want to set up these roadblocks to people. Again, I have nothing good to say about practicing family law, and I still think it's important. I run clinics myself. um, I want to help as many people as I can, and donating that time is, I think, powerful.
Ultimately, what you're saying is that if you are unhappy or unsatisfied in one practice area, you can consider another practice area, right? This podcast is not all about the law is terrible, I'm leaving to open a food truck. But also, maybe when you open a business or you go to a different practice group and you have more energy, you want to have the food truck. You want to do this. You want to do the marketing stuff.
That's funny that you say food truck. At some point in my practice, I met a client who, one thing and another, and they told me that they made their successful restaurant life from owning some Little Caesars franchises. And I decided I was going to buy a Little Caesars franchise, and so that's like a side hustle that I honestly wish that I didn't do. So if you're interested in the food industry as like a side hustle, probably like ask me some questions about my reservations to you doing that. But honestly, it's been a very educational experience, and I'm very thankful that I have a law career, and that I'm not doing just restaurant work.
Yeah, and thanks for even having your podcast and like creating something that didn't exist before, even if you are primarily talking about Washington law, because every resource helps, right? There's so little that you're taught about being a lawyer in law school, and that's why we have these other extracurricular resources so that people can learn about it.
Yeah.
Um, so, Josh, my last question to you. You've already been giving a little bit of advice, but what advice would you have for law students or young lawyers about what they can do with their law degrees?
I think that the first most important advice I have for all law students or young lawyers is build a network, because I was twice elected president of the Pierce County Young Lawyers Association, and there are attorneys that practice in my same area of law that I've asked questions to and said, "Hey, what do you think about my ideas in moving the case this way?" And they said, "Whoa, what about this?" And bouncing ideas off of like-minded people who have their own network, and your network expands exponentially in that regard. But then there are people who practice in areas that I don't practice in, that I can learn about or send clients to them and they can send clients to me. When I get phone calls, as being a great marketer, I'm getting a ton of calls that I can't help these people with. And I don't want to just tell them, "Hey, I can't help you, call Google." Anybody that I can send a referral to, I'm connecting a person who needs help with a resource that I knew existed that they didn't. And so understanding what resources are out there or what attorneys that I think would do a good job, build that network, connect yourself with other attorneys who care about what they're doing, who are passionate about what they're doing, who are good at what they're doing, not just people who are just going to resolve a case and not press the gas and push for trial and go to court. Find the attorneys who are willing to be attorneys and learn from them.
I love that. Network, find attorneys who want to train, and learn, learn, learn. Because once you graduate from law school and pass the bar, that is not the end of your education. You will still be learning all the time. So, well, thank you so much for sharing with everybody, and I will talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.